All right, excellent. Let's see. Let me make sure everything's working properly. This thing is driving me crazy today. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Nathan Smith. I am the Digital Programming Coordinator for the Central Arkansas Library System. Thanks so much for joining me for Microsoft PowerPoint for Beginners. I'm glad to have you here. There are a couple of quick preliminary things that I always like to get out of the way before we really get things rolling. First of all, I do want to just let you know, this is, of course, by no means the only live virtual event we've got coming up here at CALS. We are always doing a lot of cool stuff. So I definitely encourage you to check out what all's coming up. The easiest way to do that, head to cals.org, move your mouse over events, click on search for an event online, and you'll see the list of upcoming events right there. And hopefully you'll be able to join us for something cool coming up soon. We've also got, there are also some good technology classes coming up, including a pair of classes that I like to do from time to time about CAL's digital services, where you can check out ebooks, audiobooks, video, all kinds of things, and even stream music for free with your library card. So if you have a CALS card, it's a great class because you'll learn how to take advantage of those things that are free to you and really pretty easy to access once you know where they are. So, so I definitely encourage you to join me for that class or those classes, excuse me, which will be tomorrow and a week from tomorrow, right here at 1 o'clock. So come on down and we'll tackle those topics as well. So let's see what else. Okay. I always like to encourage folks to ask questions during my classes. It's very important to me that folks be able to speak up and ask questions whenever they like, whenever questions occur to them. So if you have a question at any point, please just let me know. Don't worry about whether you're interrupting. That's not going to bother me one bit. And also, don't worry about if it's a silly question or not. I'm not going to judge you on that. We're all at different levels, and the point of the class is for you to learn stuff. So if you're learning something that's useful to you, then we're using our class time well, even if I'm not following my outline at that precise moment. And if you're not learning stuff that's useful to you, then we might as well just go ahead and call it a day. There's no sense in us using our time if I'm just prattling on to you and you're not learning anything. So if you need clarification on something I've said, if you have kind of an unrelated question that's well, not completely unrelated, but if you have a question that's a little bit of a sidetrack, all of that's perfectly fine. Please just let me know. In order to do that, if you're joining me here on Zoom, all you need to do, if you're on a computer, is head down to the bottom of your Zoom window, click on the little speech bubble that says chat and type your chat question in, and then press enter on a PC or return if you're on a Mac. If you are joining me from the Zoom mobile app, tap in the middle of the screen, tap the little ... more button in the top corner there, and tap on chat, and that will get you to the same place. Again, type your question in and send it to me anytime. If you're joining me on one of the live streaming services, if you're on Facebook or YouTube watching me there, then just use the live chat. If you're on YouTube, it should be just to the right of my video here. Or if you are on Facebook, join me on the, just ask your question in the comments and I'll see those. Those are on just a smidge of delay. So if you don't see them or so if I don't see them right away, don't worry. I will see those momentarily. So, so yeah. And of course, if you are on one of those streaming services and you want to join us here in the Zoom webinar, you're welcome to do that. You should find a link in the description or in the text of the post. Last thing, or no, second to last thing, I guess. Sometimes we encounter technical difficulties because that's the way that technology works or doesn't work sometimes. So if there are technical problems, if my mic goes out, if my screen sharing freezes up or stops working, or if my camera goes off, please let me know that that happened. And that way I can make sure that we get that taken care of as quickly as possible and use as little of our, and waste as little of our class time as we can. And finally, unfortunately, it appears that the dining room table that we've been waiting a couple months for at this point might be delivered during our class time. So if so, I might have to step away for a moment to let the delivery folks in. So sorry about that. As I said, we've been waiting a while for this to come. And so hopefully there won't be much of a disruption if at all. So if that happens, might have to step away, but I will be back. So don't worry. All right, that's all of the preamble. Let's get into it. I'm going to go ahead and fire up PowerPoint and my screen sharing, and that way we can dive in and talk about this. All right. Let's see. There you are, PowerPoint. Okay, cool. All right, screen sharing is ready to go, and here we are in our on the sort of starting screen for PowerPoint. Now, one quick thing to mention at the outset here is I'll be working in the Office 365 version of PowerPoint. What that means for your purposes is I will be is that you might see some features that you don't have access to yet if you have a previous version of PowerPoint, either 2019 or 2016 or 2013, or if you have Office 365 but you haven't updated your PowerPoint in a while. In any of those situations, you might see something, you might see little buttons that you don't have in your version, or you might see kind of just cosmetic differences in how the program works or where exactly things are laid out. In general, it should be almost exactly the same. And so if you have a different version of PowerPoint, don't worry about it too much. It will, it'll be fine. But if you have one, honestly, if you have one that works on a modern computer, pretty much everything I'm going to show you today is applicable. So so don't worry if your screen doesn't look exactly like mine does. That's totally fine. All right, so here we go. What we've got here on this first screen is just a starting point for us. Over on the left, we have some basic options. We can start a new presentation from here. We can open an existing one that's already saved on our computer. We have a list of recent presentations that I've opened down here at the bottom. And up at the top, we have this area that says new, that's got the option of a blank presentation, a few little walkthroughs of different types of features or of just using the program in general. And then some what we call templates, basically pre-made slideshows that you can tweak. You can add your own images and your own text and make them the way you want them to be. So we could start with one of these templates, but instead of that, we're going to go over here and click on blank presentation to get things rolling. And there we have it. Now we've started out. Let's go ahead and talk about the layout here, so that way you know kind of in general where things are, and that way we can make sure that that you can find stuff when I refer to it from time to time. So up here at the top on the left-hand side is an area that we call the quick access toolbar. Excuse me. The quick access toolbar is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. There are certain features, certain options that you might want quick access to. And so in order to make that happen, we have the quick access toolbar. By default, the quick access toolbar in PowerPoint is going to have 4 options in it. The save button right here that looks like a little old school floppy disk. If you have just created a slideshow and you click on that button, what it's going to do is it's going to trigger the save as function. Basically what that means is it's going to prompt you to name your slideshow, and it's going to prompt you to pick a place for it to live on your computer, essentially a folder for it to be in. So you click on that triggers that save as function, and then you can pick a spot on your computer for the presentation to be stored. Once it's there though, clicking that save button again, or if you open an existing presentation that's already stored on your hard drive, clicking that again will just update the existing presentation with whatever changes you've made since the last time. So that keeps things pretty easy, and that will that will hopefully help you. I definitely encourage you use that as often as you need to. Do it fairly regularly, so that way you don't lose your work if something happens, if you accidentally close PowerPoint, or if your laptop runs out of battery, or if you're working on your desktop computer and the power goes out, or whatever. In any of those situations, you for all of those reasons, you want to save early and save often is what we say. So that's the first button that's up there at the top usually. The button next to that is the undo button. The undo button is sort of your computer time travel button. And basically what you do with the undo button is if you find you've made a mistake, and who among us hasn't done that, you can use the undo button to reverse whatever that last change was that you made. So for example, if I had some text on my slide and I delete it, I can hit the undo button, and that will bring the text back. So pretty straightforward. If I make multiple mistakes in a row, and who among us hasn't done that, I can actually use the undo button multiple times to reverse more than one mistake. So if I delete some text and then I change the color of something, and then I type something and I realize all of that was a mistake, then I can hit the undo button 3 times. The first time will remove the thing that I typed that I didn't want to keep. The second thing will change the color back. What's that? The thing that I said before. And then the thing before that and then clicking it one more time will bring back that text that I deleted before. So it's a really easy way to get, to remove mistakes if you make them, when you make them, I should say. We're all human. And that way you can make sure that, and it's a lot easier than recreating your work sometimes. However, sometimes if we make several mistakes in a row, we might get a little overzealous. We might end up undoing some work that we meant to keep. And that happens to the best of us as well. But it's no big deal. Thankfully, next to the undo button is, sometimes at least, the redo button. Now, right now, if I move my mouse over this, There we go. It'll say can't repeat because it's actually got the repeat button here, which we'll talk about in a moment. But sometimes you'll have the redo button, which is essentially the mirror image of the undo button over here. So it's an arrow pointing off to the right. If you hit that redo button, what's going to happen is it will undo your undoing. So for example, let's say that I made those 3 mistakes, as I mentioned before, but then I got a little excited and I accidentally clicked the undo button 5 times. In order to get back to where I need to be, all I need to do is hit the redo button twice, and that will bring me back. It will undo those 2 extra undoings and get me back to where I need to be. So that's the redo button. The only catch with the redo button is you can only redo right after you've undone, or as the next action after you've undone, I should say specifically. So if you think about, for example, my example of clicking undo 5 times when I meant to click it 3 times. If I click it 5 times and then I go make some other changes to my presentation, and then I come back and I try to hit redo, it's not going to work because I've essentially kind of like a time travel movie. I've gone back in time and changed the past. So now I can't redo the work that I lost by hitting undo at that point. I can only hit undo as the next action, or redo as the next action after I hit undo. So just bear that in mind. If you hit undo, particularly if you hit it multiple times, just check over your work and make sure that you didn't undo some work that you intended to keep. If you did, use the redo button right then. If you didn't, then move on with your life. You're good to go. So that's redo. And then normally in this space, more often than not, is the repeat button, which is this circular arrow here. The repeat button, what it does is it turns your the repeat button basically allows you to repeat an action that you just took over and over. For example, if I change some text to be blue, then I can go and select some other text and hit the repeat button, and it'll change the other text to be that same color blue, and so on and so forth. So anything like that you could do repeatedly in a bunch of different situations, you can use the repeat button to make it happen over and over again. That's pretty cool. And the redo button replaces that if you've just hit undo. Finally, the last button that's always there is this start from the beginning button right here. You can also press F5 on the keyboard as is noted in parentheses there. When you press F5 or when you click this button, it's going to start your slideshow from the first slide. So we'll talk about that a little bit later towards the end of class. I've added an additional option to my quick access toolbar, which is start from this slide. Basically, that allows me, if I'm in the middle of working on a slide that's a little more complicated and I want to see how it's working, I can click this button and it'll start my presentation from there rather than me having to go to cycle through all the slides until I get to the one that I'm looking for. So that's useful. If I click this drop-down arrow next to it, I can select other options here that I could add to the quick access toolbar, and I can even click more commands down here to add almost any option that I have in all of PowerPoint to that toolbar. So that makes it, so if you find yourself hunting for a particular option or command, as we say, a lot, then this is a good way to go because you can just throw it up there in the quick access toolbar, and then you don't have to worry about hunting for it every time you need it. Over here on the left, also you'll see this auto save switch. Right now it's turned to off, If you have, whoops, if you have a presentation that's stored either on Microsoft OneDrive or Microsoft SharePoint, and you're editing that, this autosave will can be enabled, and basically, and I think it'll actually turn on by default, and that will allow you to save your that'll allow you to save your changes, or that will allow PowerPoint to automatically update the existing file with the new changes without you having to click save, which can be pretty handy. But it is also a double-edged sword, because if you make a bunch of changes and you're like, oh, I don't like this, I need to start over from where I was, all those changes have been auto-saved, and it's harder to go back and restore it to the way it was before you started editing it. So just bear in mind whether that's on or off, and that'll make your life a lot easier. Next to that, we have where it says Presentation 1 PowerPoint. So whatever the file name for my presentation is, that's what'll show up here where it says Presentation 1. Right now, it just shows me a placeholder name because it's a brand new file. And then PowerPoint, just in case you forgot what program you're using. And then there's a little search bar up here where you can search a bunch of different things, Microsoft's help, and potentially also your OneDrive files and folders and that sort of thing, and so on and so forth. There's your usual options here: the X, the little minimize button, and so forth. Down below is an area that we call the ribbon. The ribbon is a design concept that Microsoft likes a lot, and for good reason. It's pretty useful. The way that the ribbon works is rather than having a collection of different toolbars and different drop-down menus and all sorts of places that you could potentially look for your options, Microsoft instead tries to put everything up here at the top in the ribbon. That's pretty handy. The way I like to think of it is sort of like a tool chest. If you've ever been somewhere where they have a lot of tools, a wood shop, a mechanic's shop, whatever, if they've got things pretty well organized, they probably have like a drawer for the screwdrivers and a drawer for the ratchets and a drawer for the hammers and so on and so forth, so that when they go over to their to the tool chest, they can pull out the drawer, grab the tool they need, and get right back to work, rather than having to dig through a big old pile of tools to find exactly the tool they're looking for, which can use up a lot of time and honestly just be a frustrating hassle. And so the ribbon is kind of the same thing, but for your commands here in PowerPoint or in a lot of other Microsoft software. The Home tab contains the tools that you use most frequently. So we'll talk about those, a lot of those as we move forward here. The Insert tab here, when I click on Insert, changes things so that now instead of those kind of basic options, we now have a collection of commands that are specifically designed for inserting things into my PowerPoint presentation. All kinds of things, and we'll talk about some of these as we go forward as well. The Design tab here, when I click on that, changes it so that, changes my commands again so that I can change my slideshow to have a variety of different themes. That can be pretty cool and useful. Transitions here allows me to change what animation happens when I move from slide to slide, and we'll talk about that a little later on. Animations is similar, but these animations are things that happen on the slide itself without moving from slide to slide. And excuse me, so we'll also dig into that a little later. The slideshow tab here gives me the from the beginning or from current slide. There are ways of presenting your slideshow online. There's an option for making a custom slideshow, which is basically a derivative version of the slideshow that you want. where you can sort of, or that you might want, where you can sort of tailor it in different ways. There are a variety of things here that you can use. And also you have your display settings here so that you can change where your presentation is showing up. The review tab here has some collaboration tools, the spell check, the thesaurus, things like that. The view tab essentially changes the way that you're seeing your presentation without changing the content of it, and allows you to switch around the layout of your PowerPoint window somewhat. There's a help tab here with just help information and ways to contact help and things like that. And then because I have Adobe Acrobat installed on my computer, I have an Acrobat tab here. You won't have that, and you don't need it. So those are the main tabs on the ribbon. One other thing I'll mention, though, is the File tab here. When I click on the File tab, it takes me to this other area, which might look a little familiar, called the Backstage. This is a slightly different version of what we saw when we first opened the program up. In addition to these three options that were here before, we now have some other options for dealing with our presentation more as a computer file and kind of less as and options that don't so much change the content of the slideshow itself. So the info tab gives me a lot of what we call metadata about the presentation. So it tells us how much space it's taking up on our computer, who created the presentation, and when it was last modified, and a variety of other things like that. We've got save and save as over here. Again, I have save as Adobe PDF, but you won't see that. There's print, so you can print it out on paper if you need to. There's share for sharing your presentation with various folks through sundry online means. Export, where you can convert your presentation to other types of files, and that can be useful sometimes. There's a close button here. Don't click on that, but if you did click on it, it would close your presentation without closing PowerPoint. And then down here, you have account to deal with your Microsoft account, feedback to tell Microsoft if you encounter some sort of bug, or if you want to suggest some new feature that you think PowerPoint should include, and then options down here to change the settings in PowerPoint. To get out of this Backstage without making any changes or doing anything in particular, you just click this left arrow up at the top. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's talk about a little more of this stuff here. So we've got this, what we call the slide sorter over here on the left. And this basically allows you to click between different slides so you can change them. And we'll talk about that more soon. This is the editing area where you actually work on the particular slide that you're changing at the moment. And over here on the right, sometimes you'll have a little sidebar. This one is design ideas. So it's giving me ideas of things I might do to make my presentation look a little more flashy. I'm not going to do anything with that right now, but that could be useful if I'm just looking for some ideas. And then down here at the bottom is the status bar. We have some display settings here. If I click on that, then I can change like which screen my presentation will show up on as I'm presenting it, and some other stuff like that. I've got a notes section down here. If I click on that, it's going to slide up and I can insert some notes. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that. Click there. I'll click in this where it says click to add notes, and beautiful. All right, now I've got some notes. And then down here at the bottom, I have my zoom options as well. So right now I'm zoomed to 103%. So I'm seeing this slide slightly larger than, I guess you might say, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Whew. Slightly larger than normal size, I guess you might say. But I could drag this slider to the left to zoom out, or I could drag it to the right to zoom in. All right, so that's the layout. I'm going to click this X to get rid of the little design suggestion sidebar, and it'll actually expand my view of my slide a little bit so I can see more of it. And let's dive into making a presentation. Okay, so we all know, hopefully, hopefully you know why you're here. PowerPoint is presentation software. It allows you to add a visual component to something that would otherwise just be essentially you talking. So that can be really useful if you're trying to teach something, or if you're trying to bring home a point about, if you're in a business meeting and you're trying to demonstrate something, or any number of things. Honestly, it can be a variety of there can be a variety of ways you might want to use this. So that's what PowerPoint is designed for, and we're gonna build ourselves a little slideshow as we move forward in the class. Okay, first things first. I've got these two little boxes here. One key thing to note about PowerPoint, since this is PowerPoint for beginners, is if you've used, say, things like Word a lot more than you've used PowerPoint, you might, if you wanted to add text to your slideshow, you might just, start typing on your keyboard, and that's that's not going to work, unfortunately. In fact, if I do that, if I've clicked here, what's going to happen? Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to undo. If I click somewhere in here and then I just start typing, normally what it'll do, particularly if I didn't have these little text boxes here, would be to give me a warning that says you can't just type on your in your presentation. That's totally fine. But basically, anytime that you have text on your slide in a PowerPoint presentation, you have to have a text box for it to live in. You can't just start typing on your slideshow just wherever. So you have to have a text box. And what PowerPoint has done for us with this default slide is given us two text boxes to start out with, one for a title and one for a subtitle. So I'm going to click where it says click to add title. And I'm going to type a title. Wonderful. And then down here where it says click to add subtitle, guess what I'm going to do? Beautiful. Now we have our first slide. It's a little bare bones, but we have it. Let's talk a little bit about tweaking some of the options with these with this text box. We're not going to spend too long on this because a lot of this stuff is not specific to PowerPoint, and is kind of functionality that you'll find in a lot of different kinds of programs in a very similar way. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on this. We're going to we're just going to touch on this briefly, and then we're going to move to some things that are more PowerPoint specific, because that's more interesting and probably more useful to you. So if I wanted to change the look of this, what I'm going to do is click with my mouse next to either the end of this line of text or the beginning, and I'm just going to move my mouse over the text so that it sort of highlights it in gray. It's selected, is what we say. Once I've selected the text, now that it's been selected, I can make changes to it up here at the top in this font area right here. So one of the things that I have right off the bat is I can change the font. When I say font, what we're talking about here is just the look of the characters that make up my text. So the way that they're designed. Sometimes this is known as a typeface. I think that's probably the more technical way to refer to it. But most of the time in computer world, we just say font. So the default font for headings, at least in my slideshow, is called Calibri Light. But if I want something different, I can click here on this drop-down arrow and I can select something different. There are all sorts of different fonts that I have installed on my computer, and I could select something that looks more the way I want it to look. If I know the name of the font that I want, rather than clicking in this drop-down menu and scrolling way down, I could instead type something in. So I can go, I'll start typing. I typed NEW and it got the one that I was looking for. I'll press enter and now I've changed it. Excellent. You may or may not have the same fonts that I do on your computer. You probably don't because I've installed some extra ones. But you can change it to whatever you want to be. You can also change the font size. So 60 is the default here, but I could change it to, I can make it much smaller by selecting, say, 16 here, or I could go bigger by making it, say, 96, for example. I'll put it at 66. It's about the biggest I can get it without making it too large for the text box here. Next to that, I have a couple of buttons, and I can select from the menu. I could set a different size by typing it in manually. So if I wanted to go to, say, 68 or something, type that in, press enter. Nope, turns out it's too large. 66 it is. And then I've got the A next to this with an up arrow. That's going to make my text just a little bit larger. It'll go one step bigger, essentially, in the drop-down menu here. Or I have this smaller A with the down arrow, which will go one step smaller in the drop-down menu. Wonderful. And then down here, I have a bunch of other style options. So there's bold. It's hard to tell. Let me make it smaller so you can see. So bold, italics, underlining, a drop shadow. So if I click here, you'll notice there's a little subtle shadow down below the text right now, and off to the right just a smidge. Let me get that off there. Actually, I'll leave that. There's this AB, which is the strike through. If I click on that, it crosses out text. So if you want to have a word but have it crossed out, there you go. This AV right here, this is character spacing, sometimes known as kerning. I could make it very tight, put the characters right next to each other like this. Tight, normal right here, loose, or very loose. So I can have my characters spaced very far apart, or I can have them squished down close together. And I can even click more spacing if I want to change it to an option that doesn't match up with one of these, either squish it in further or make it find some option in the middle. It actually looks nice, kind of pushed a little closer together like that. There we go. Cool. Okay. Then we've also got a couple of other things. We have highlighting. So the highlighting is a little weird. If I click on this with it selected, it deselects the text, but it highlights it in yellow, kind of like if you were going through and using a highlighter pen. If I select the text again and I click the button again, then it'll unhighlight it. I could also change the color of highlighting. If I don't have any text selected and I click on the highlighting button, you'll notice it kind of shades it in gray. And now I can go through and I can drag over to select text, but rather than selecting it while I'm in highlight mode, it just highlights it for me. Or I can unhighlight it by dragging over again like this. To get out of highlight mode, I just click it again. So that's a little different from most of these other settings. And just want to make you aware of that. Finally, here we have this A with the underline, the red little color swatch underneath it. If I click on that, it's just going to turn my text red. If I click on it here, though, click on the drop-down arrow next to it, it's going to give me this drop-down menu with a bunch of different options. I'll make it this nice blue. And so I can choose a color. And that color becomes the default. You'll notice the color swatch underneath the A now is blue instead of red. And so now I can use that color again elsewhere. So that's handy. If I've decided I don't like any of these changes and I want to reverse them, I can come up here, click this A with the eraser next to it, and it changes all the settings for the selected text back to what they were before. So in this case, I get 60 as the size, Calibri Light as the font, my bold and drop shadows and my colors and everything, all that's been removed. And so now I just get this. Highlighting is the only thing that doesn't get removed when you do this. You have to remove the highlighting yourself manually, essentially. All right, I'm gonna undo that because it kind of looks more fun the way I had it. Okay, so other things that you can do with this, just to quickly gloss those as well. I'll come down here and work with the subtitle just to make it a little easier. You can change your alignment options here. So this text is centered, but I could align it along the left-hand margin of my text box, like so. I could align it along the right-hand margin of my text box. Or I can use what's called justified text, which basically means that my text is aligned along the left margin until I get to the end of a paragraph. And then, it's aligned along the left and right margins until I get to the end of a paragraph. And then the very last line of each paragraph is only aligned with the left-hand margin. Justified text is what you normally find in, say, a book or a magazine or a newspaper. You usually use justified text. So that can give you a nice clean look for kind of a block of text. Obviously, a lot of times you'll want it to be centered or something else. You can also create lists like bulleted lists or numbered lists. There are a number of different ways to do that in PowerPoint, though. All right, let's see. So let's go ahead and create another slide and let's play with it some more. So I'm going to come up here on the Home tab. I have these two buttons actually. There's or 1.5 buttons maybe. I don't know. If I click this button right here above the words new slide, the button that has the little plus sign on it, then it's just going to create a new slide. And it's going to use, well, let's see. It's going to give me this particular slide design, which there are slightly more in-depth reasons why it's giving me this particular type of like slide layout that we're probably not going to get into, but it has to do with themes and so forth. But it'll give me just this layout for a slide. I'm going to hit undo and remove that. If I click the words new slide and the little drop-down arrow next to that, then I get the option to choose from a bunch of different types of slides that are available. So a title slide, like we had before, title and content, which is I guess that's what it gave us when I hit the button up there. A section header slide. So you can basically have a section title and a little subtitle or description for that section. To content, comparison, title only, blank, content with caption, and picture with caption. So all of these are different, slightly different things. They're not terribly different from each other though. But once we talk about one of these pre-laid out slides, then you'll kind of get the idea of what they're supposed to do. Let me choose the to content this time. Okay. All right, so I've got click to add title up here. So I can add a title for this slide. Okay, lovely. Now we have a title. Okay, so now we can do one of two things, or one of a bunch of things. Each of these blocks down here, rather than being just a text box like we had up here or like we had on the other slide, these are sort of placeholders for different types of content. Where it says click to add text with a little bullet, that is going to give me, that's going to be a way to create a bulleted list. So I can click there and I can start typing a list. I'll show you. So there we go. All I need to do is click next to the little bullet where it says click here to type a list, type the first item on my list, and then press enter, which will, and that creates another bullet and allows me to immediately type the second item. All right, cool. So we've got the start of that list. Now over here on the side, oh, looks like they have arrived. Give me just a moment. I will be right back. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. I am back. Okay, so that's the bulleted list. It's pretty easy. And I can even change this to a numbered list if I prefer. So I can select these, click on the little numbering button up here at the top, and now it's a numbered list. You can click the drop-down arrows next to this also to change the look, either to switch between different styles of bullets like this, or you can click on the drop-down next to the numbering to change it to, say, Roman numerals or letters or whatever the case may be, whatever you want. Over here, instead of a list, I could choose, or I could do, oh my goodness. Woo, all right, just a sec. What an interesting afternoon. Okay, here we go. So instead of a list over here, I mean, I could create another list, but I could also insert a table. For example, click here and it'll ask me for a number of columns and a number of rows, and I can just fill those in, click OK, and then when I click there, I can, all I need to do to move from cell to cell, from one of these boxes to the other, is just press the tab key on the left-hand side of my keyboard. Pretty straightforward. You know, if I hit tab enough, so I've moved to this cell, and then if I hit it again, it'll move down to the left-hand side of the next row. Up at the top, you'll notice I have some additional options up here in the ribbon. I have two more tabs. There's a table design tab and a layout tab right here. And what these do is they allow me to specifically tweak the settings for this table. And that could be pretty handy. I could change the colors. I could change the way that the borders show up. I could add additional rows and columns, change the margins inside the cells, almost anything that I need to do with that. It's pretty easy, thankfully. Once I click out of this, though, you'll notice that tab goes away. I still have an extra tab up here, which is the shape format tab. And if I click on that, I can change the settings for this text box, including filling it in with color, adding an outline around it, changing the font inside of the text box. Well, I guess I did that over on the home tab. Changing it to a specific, they call word art style, basically making the characters look interesting. So there's a whole host of things you can do there. But again, if I click out of this and deselect this text box, then I don't get those options up at the top anymore. I still have the ability to click between different tabs while I'm working inside of a particular, or while I'm working with a particular object, but I only have it while I'm working with that object, while that object is selected. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's add another new slide. I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow where it says new slide. And this time I'm just going to add a blank one. Okay, so on this blank slide, what we're going to do, oh, you know what? I showed you a bunch of other types of content. Let me actually undo that. And I'll click new slide up here. And let me add a title and content one more time. So I'll put in a title. And then in addition to either the list or the table, I can add a chart, which we're not going to dig into. If you're interested in how the charts work, they work very similarly to Excel, and you can take the Excel class, or you can actually check out the recorded version of the Excel class on YouTube at the CAL's YouTube channel. Just search Central Arkansas Library System Excel and you'll find it. There's a smart art graphic, which is a way to do things like little charts, say a hierarchy or org chart, or a little mind map, or things like that. You've got 3D models, so you can actually insert a 3D rotatable object into your slideshow. You can insert a picture. You can find a picture online from a collection of stock images. You can insert a video, or you can insert a little icon. So there are a whole host of things that you can drop into this little content section here. A lot you can do with that. So let's see. In addition to that, we've got our, so let's go ahead and drop a picture in here. So what I'm going to do, you probably have a picture somewhere on your computer. If you don't, you can click on this stock images and try that. I'm going to click on this pictures selection right here, and that's going to open up the file browser on my computer. I'll scroll up a little ways. Whoops, that's not it. Click on downloads. and I'll find an image. There's one, and I'll click insert. That's going to drop this picture right in here. Now, when I do that, the first time I do that, it's going to give me a whole bunch of these different suggestions here. And some of these look pretty good, but honestly, we don't want to jump straight to this. I want to show you how you would actually achieve something like this. So I'm just going to click the X to get rid of this design ideas tab for now, and we'll leave the picture where it is. Up at the top, we have this picture format tab. Oh, come on now. Zoom is getting in the way a little bit. Okay, got to reselect the picture, click on picture format. And now I've got a bunch of different things happening here. There's the option to remove the background from a picture. So that could be useful if you've got an image that's very simple and has kind of a plain background. That tool can really help you. If it has a more unusual background, like if it's an outdoor picture and you're trying to remove, a landscape from behind the person, forget about it. It's not going to work. Or if it does work, it's not going to work very well. It'll look pretty bad. But if it's something, I'm not saying you should do this, but if you downloaded a picture of a product from Amazon and you needed to remove the background, kind of the white background that it's always on, from the image, then you could use this remove background to do that pretty easily. Next to that, we have, you can do color correction stuff, like changing the brightness and contrast and sharpening or softening the image. You can change the color, so the saturation or the color tone. When we say color tone, what I'm really talking about is the color temperature of an object. So the higher the color temperature, this is a little counterintuitive. The higher the color temperature is, the cooler an image looks. The lower the color temperature, the warmer it looks. So if I go all the way up here to 1120K, you'll notice the image, it's kind of hard to tell with this picture, but it looks a little more bluish. Whereas over here, it looks a little more orangish. So you can actually see if I change my lighting here, if I switch it to the coolest color temperature, or the highest temperature there, it's more bluish. This is the lower color temperature, and this is kind of in the middle right here where I usually go. And you can even recolor the image, so I could make it, I could kind of wash it out and make it look primarily a specific color. Artistic effects right here, if I click on this, is going to give me a whole host of different options that I could choose. I can pick, and it usually takes a while for it to process, particularly with a higher image or a higher quality image like this. You could do kind of a blur effect. Let's see what this one is. Plastic wrap, so make it look like it's in plastic wrap. You've got this cutout effect. So the brighter parts of the image, you can see more details, but the darker parts of the image are just sort of washed out. This, particularly with, this is the cement effect. So it kind of looks like it's a sidewalk drawing of some sort, all kinds of things. You can change how transparent it is. So I've got 100% or 0% transparency, but I could go down and down a ways, and you can see the background through it a little more easily. You can also add a little frame style up here. You could add a border around it in different colors. Picture effects, so you could add a shadow behind it. If I go down here, we've got kind of a, there's a shadow, a drop down right here, shadow to the side, and it's kind of hard to see. You could make it sort of look 3D. You could do soft edges where it'll sort of blur the edges a little bit, add a glow behind it, and so on and so forth, a reflection underneath. So bunch of stuff you can do there. Let's add something else too. I'm gonna I'm going to insert a little icon here, a little graphic. I'm going to click on insert, let's go to icons here. And I've got a whole bunch of different options that I can search by. If you don't have this icons thing, that's okay. I'm going to add a light bulb icon here. Click insert. And now there it is. Whoops. Okay, stop suggesting ideas. That's good. Okay, so now I've got this little light bulb here. I can move it all sorts of different ways. And I can change the colors. Let me go ahead and actually do that. Graphics outline. Okay, yeah, that'll add an outline. I actually need to change the fill color. I'll move this. I'll change the fill color to white. And we'll go with no outline for now, but I could add an outline around it, like say a yellow one, for example, or something of that nature. So I've got my my graphic of the light bulb. I'll make it a little larger. All I need to do to expand it to the right size is to drag it like this from the corners. I can sort of resize it another way by using these edge dots, but when I do that, it causes a problem because it sort of distorts. Doesn't quite look like a light bulb anymore. I'm going to go up here and undo. My advice when you're using a photo or some other type of image or graphic where the shape matters a great deal, what exactly the shape is. In this case, a light bulb is a very recognizable shape. And if it's stretched out a lot, it doesn't look the same. And of course, certainly with photos, particularly photos of people or photos of animals, you can tell for sure whether, whether the image looks right or not. In all those types of cases, I would advise in general that you pretend these dots in the middle of the edges don't exist and only use these dots right here to resize the image. So in this case, so just the ones in the corners, that'll resize the image proportionally. So if I drag it, essentially, if I drag it out from the middle, then it's going to make my picture a little taller and a little wider. But proportionally, it'll keep the same shape. If I take it and drag it inward, then it's going to make it proportionally shorter and narrower. So I definitely recommend that. A lot of folks, particularly if they're doing a background or something like that, they will and they need their image to be a slightly different shape. They'll be tempted to take these and sort of drag them out like this. If I wanted it to take up the whole slide. Whoops. But in general, it just looks sort of off. I mean, that's not terrible, but you can see it's been stretched a little bit. So instead of resizing images that way, if you need it to be a different shape, and sometimes you do, if you need it to be a different shape, select the image and click on Picture Format right here. Then what you can do is come up and find up here in the corner, and it's kind of hard to see, so I'll actually turn off my camera for a moment. Up here in the corner, you'll see the crop tool right here. When I click on this, it's just going to give me, instead of, well, in addition to the little dots to resize, it's going to give me these matte lines in the corners and along the edges here. And I can take these and I can drag them in so that essentially it cuts off parts of the images or the image so that it can no longer be seen. That's totally, well, that's a pretty sort of normal, or, that'll allow you to resize the image without having to completely, or without distorting it. It'll just cut off parts of the image so that you can get it to be the right shape. Let's see, give me just a moment here. Wonderful. Okay, great. All right, so now I've got that situated, and oh, test. Okay, well, it seems to be working. Oh, weird. Okay, anyway, so now I've got that situated, and I can, once I've got it cropped the way to the shape that I want it to be, I can just click outside the image somewhere and get out of the cropping mode, and now I've got my newly reshaped image exactly as I want it. Another option in this crop in these crop settings, though, is I can click the word crop with the drop down arrow, and I've got crop to shape. I can choose a particular shape here that I can crop it to, or I can choose aspect ratio. An aspect ratio just okay. I don't know what's happening there. An aspect ratio, just to kind of fill you in on the jargon, is basically just the ratio of width to height for something that's rectangular. So we use that a lot in video and photography. Aspect ratios in video and photography, when we talk about that, what we basically are referring to is the or what we're referring to is, or we write it kind of like this. So an aspect ratio of 1 to 1, that's exactly square. So for every 1 unit of height or of width, we've got 1 unit of height. So if I select that, then I'm going to crop it to exactly a square. If I choose, say, for example, 16 to 9, that's the aspect ratio, the shape of the actual slide that I'm working with. If you're using widescreen slides in PowerPoint, it's a 16 to 9 aspect ratio. So I've got that. I'll click here. And I could just move it to the corner, drag it out, and it'll fill up the whole slide. Nice. And you've also got fill and fit. So fill will resize the image so that you get the maximum amount of the image on the slide. Essentially, it's as big as possible and aligns to one edge of this, or to 2 edges of the slide. Fit is going to fit the entire picture inside of the slide, so you can see the whole thing, but it's the maximum size. All right, let's talk about some. Let's talk about. Whoops, almost forgot. One last thing that's up here in this in the picture format tab. In some versions of PowerPoint, it'll say picture tools format. But one set of options that's here and is also on the home tab up here under arrange is the these arrange options. When I click on this with some object selected on my slide, I can change which way the everything's pointing. Okay, give me just one more moment, folks. I will be right back. Thank you so much. All right, continuing onward. It's all squared away. Okay. All right, so one last thing to mention about these arrange settings here. So basically, I've got this light bulb thing here. If I want it, let's say behind my design, I'll go ahead and change the color so that it's a little more, so it sticks out a little bit more. Let's make it, we'll make it green. Okay, got that here. If I want it behind this image rather than in front, all I need to do is take this and click send backward. That's going to put it behind whatever I have there. If I click bring forward, it's going to bring it in front. If I do send backward twice, or if I click on send backward and I click send to back, it's going to put it behind everything. The way that PowerPoint does this, pretty straightforward. Whenever you put something on a slide, all it does is move the slide or is place it on top of the other objects. Even if the objects are not touching, it keeps that arrangement. So if I put 4 objects, one in each corner, and none of them are touching each other, whenever I drag them together, excuse me, the one that I added first is going to be on the bottom. The one I added second is going to be on top of that. The one I added third is going to be on top of that. And the one I added fourth is going to be on the very top. So all of that, so that's how that's, these arrange options allow you to move things forward and backwards in that order, however you want them to be. All right, let's talk animations and transitions. So we'll start with animations. I'm going to click on the animations tab here. And let's say that I want this, this image here to not appear on my slide when I first switch to it, but then to fade in as it, but then to fade in when I'm ready for it. If that's the case, what I'm going to do is just click fade up here at the top with the picture selected. And that's going to add the fade animation. And you'll notice my computer immediately shows me a little preview of the fade animation. If I do it again, it does the same thing. If I wanted it to be a little more gradual, and I probably do, I'll go ahead and change this duration over here and bump it up to, say, 1 second fully. And that's going to fade in so that everything, or that's going to fade in a little more slowly. Basically, slows down the animation so that it takes 1 second to do the same thing rather than just half a second. I could also add a delay if I want to. I'm not going to do that in this case, but we'll talk about that in a sec. Okay, I've got my little light bulb here. I can, and let's say I want the light bulb to kind of fall from above my slide. What I'm going to do is choose fly in. You'll notice it's coming up from the bottom, so I've got to tweak that. Instead of having it come up from the bottom, I'm going to click Effect Options and do from top. So now it'll come in from the top there. And you'll notice there's a little 2 that's in red next to the graphic of the light bulb. And there's a 1 over here that's next to the graphic of all the other light bulbs. And so it's showing me what order these animations are going to happen in. So right now, well, let me show you. So I've got my little start from this slide button up here. Yeah, well, basically what's going to happen is when I open this, or when I move to this slide in my presentation, it's just going to show the text, here's just one piece of content. Then when I press the button that I normally would use to move to the next slide, instead of moving to the next slide, it's actually going to make the light bulb graphic here, or the light bulb photo, fade in. Then when I press the button that I normally would use to move to the next slide again, that is going to, that's going to cause the light bulb to fall, you know, from above the top of the slide. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to come up. I got to turn my camera off for y'all to see this probably. So in case you missed the duration thing, it's up here. If I what I want to happen is, instead of those being two separate actions that I have to trigger manually, first the photo showing up, then the light bulb falling down into the onto the slide. Instead, I want this to happen. I want this to happen after this one. So where it says start on click, I'm going to click on that drop down and change it to after previous. We also have with previous. If you want two animations to happen at the same time, you'd select that one. This one I'm going to choose after previous. So when this fades in, then after it's done, this will fall. So if I click preview now, fade in, fall. If I want, I could also add a delay to this one. So I'm going to click on the little the light bulb icon and add a half-second delay. When I hit preview now, the image fades in, it waits half a second, and then the icon falls. Or I could do with previous. This is probably the better way to do it. And then I could change the delay to half a second. So now it starts fading in and the light bulb falls down at the end of the fade in for the photo. So that's animations. Let's talk just briefly about transitions, and then we'll talk about displaying your slideshow for the last little bit, as well as tackle whatever questions y'all have. So here on the transitions tab, when I click there, I've got a whole bunch of transitions available to me. Whenever I choose a transition up here at the top in the transitions tab, that transition applies to, excuse me, goodness, to this specific slide that I'm working with right now. So if let's say I add the wipe. That's only going to apply to this specific slide here. So when I move from slide 2 to slide 3, the wipe transition is going to happen. If I'm moving to from slide 1 to slide 2, though, nothing's going to happen. One thing that means is if you add a transition to slide number 1, probably no one's going to see it unless they specifically see you starting the slideshow, like not just like starting to present, but actually pressing the button to start presenting the slideshow, pressing F5 or clicking this little button up here or whatever. So people probably won't see whatever transition you apply to slide number 1. That's okay. So I can choose from one of these. I can also hit these up and down arrows right here to move between different sets of transitions, or I can click this more button down here at the bottom. Kind of looks like an eject button on a VCR. If I click on that, I get subtle transitions, exciting transitions, and dynamic content. Dynamic content is supposed to look at what's on this slide and what's on this slide and kind of come up with a transition that looks right between the two of them. I haven't ever quite got the hang of how that's supposed to work, but that's what it does. The ones they call exciting transitions are, they're extremely obvious. So I want to caution you about those transitions. If you're trying to look, professional and kind of, if you're trying to look professional and you're trying to make sure that people are focused on what you're saying and your content, or if you're particularly if you're trying to communicate something serious, don't use the exciting transitions because they can get very goofy very fast. I swear a lot of these are like transitions they used on Home Improvement. So this is that's the kind of thing we're talking about. So you can see a few of these. My favorite ridiculous one is origami. Literally folds the last slide into a paper crane and it flies off. So that is very silly. Basically, I would recommend if you're trying to keep people focused on your content or you're trying to look particularly professional, I would stick with the subtle transitions up at the top rather than exciting. Not because those aren't fun, but those are very flashy and they draw attention to themselves, perhaps at the expense of the content sometimes. And certainly at the expense of the seriousness of your message if you're trying to communicate something a little more solemn. So I'll use the fade transition for this one. And then I won't have a transition for this because I don't need it. A couple of additional things to note here. You do have effect options for these as well. So you can tweak the way that your transitions work for instance, I can make the paper crane fly off to the left instead of the right. You can change the duration, so you can make transitions happen faster or more slowly. You have an apply to all button. So if you want the same transition between each set of slides, just select the transition you want and click apply to all, and it'll apply to all of them. And then you also have the option of advanced slide on mouse click or after or both. So what this is going to do on mouse click will mean when you press the button, usually it's not going to be the mouse. Usually you'll press the right arrow key on your keyboard. When you press the button to move to the next slide, on mouse click will leaving that selected will basically leave it up to you when you move to the next slide. If you choose this, check the box with this after, and then you set a time there, then it's going to automatically move to the next slide after a certain period of time. If you check both, then it'll either be when you hit the time limit or when you press the button to move to the next slide, whichever one is earlier. So if you have a slide that you only need up on the screen for a specific amount of time, you can set that after time, and that way you can time out the transition exactly the way you want it. Okay, I'm going to click on slideshow, and I'm going to click from beginning to start presenting from the beginning. One quick thing to note, I guess, about this, well, actually, let's look at the design tab just briefly. With the design tab here, you can change, essentially you can switch to different themes for your slides. Any slides that are in, any colors that are in your theme's color scheme. So if I click on, whenever I'm trying to change a color, for example, with this text color, up here at the top, it says theme colors for this row. Those are colors that are built into your theme. Those colors will automatically change if you change the design theme for your slide. So you'll notice I have a kind of this blue right now. If I switch to something like this, then it changes that, it changes the column headings there to red, and so on. And you also have variants with different color schemes or slightly different graphics. So you can use this to really apply a fresh coat of paint to your slideshow without much work at all. That's kind of cool. I'm just moving my mouse over these, but if you click on one, it will apply it like so. All right, so let's present our slideshow. I'm going to click on the slideshow tab, and you'll notice it says monitor here, and then there's a drop-down box. And I have 4 choices here. You probably won't have that. I am running the class from my laptop today, and I do have 2 additional external monitors plugged in. So in all, there are 3 different displays attached to the computer right now. So primary monitor, that's the one that's in front of me right now, the one that you're seeing. So if I selected that in the dropdown, then it would show you the full screen slideshow, the way that the audience would want to see it when I started the slideshow. Monitor 1, internal display. That's going to show the slideshow on the panel of my laptop, the built-in display. And then this one, monitor 2, is the monitor that's over here on the other side of me. I'm going to choose to display it on the laptop's screen because I want you to be able to see presenter view. I'm going to leave that box checked and you'll see what I mean. And now from beginning. Okay, so now I'm presenting the slideshow. What you can't see over here on the side is what's here inside this little window is actually what my audience is seeing full screen on the other screen that's attached to my laptop. When you turn on presenter view, what it's going to do is whichever screen it figures is going to be the one that your audience is seeing, it's going to show the, or whichever one you select as being the one that you want to present on. That's what it's going to show, or it's going to show the full screen slideshow to your audience on that one. But on the screen that's more likely to be pointed towards you, the presenter, it's going to show you this presenter view. And the presenter view gives you a bunch of extra really useful tools to help you present your slideshow in kind of a smoother, more professional looking way. You'll notice I'm moving my mouse around here. My audience can't see that because the mouse pointer is over here, not over the main slideshow. So that's really useful because I can just move around and do things on my computer without the audience, seeing my mouse move around or watching me do things. I have the ability to show the Windows taskbar here. If I click on that, it's not going to show up for you because the, actually, you know what? You may not be seeing this presenter view. So let me go ahead and make sure that you're actually seeing that. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is the window that shows me a preview of what the audience is seeing right here. Up here at the top, this will show me the Windows taskbar so that I can switch to different programs if I need to and things like that. I can change my display settings so I can switch the presenter view and the slideshow view so that way I get everything on the right screen, or I can duplicate the slideshow so I can see the slideshow full screen on both screens. There's an end slideshow button up here, but you can also press Escape, ESC, at the top left of your keyboard. I've got a timer, which shows me how long I've been presenting for. I can pause that and I can reset it anytime I want. And I can see the actual clock time here, so that's useful. I can see, so I see what my audience is seeing right here, and I see the next slide that's coming up or the next animation that's going to happen in this box. This box will show me presenter notes if there are any. I guess there aren't any this time. And so it says no notes, but it'll show me presenter notes if I made them in that little notes box that I showed at the bottom of the screen just briefly toward the beginning of class. I've got these little arrows to move from slide to slide. Normally, to move to the next slide, I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard. So there are those up, down, left, and right keys. You can use the left key to go back and the right key to move forward, like so. Down here at the bottom, you've got a bunch of helpful little tools that I really like. So one is the pen and laser pointer. If I click on this, it gives me the option, a little drop-down menu. I can choose the laser pointer, the pen, or a highlighter, and I can change ink color. So if I choose the laser pointer, it gives me a virtual laser pointer that I can move around, and my audience will be able to see that as they're watching. So that can be really useful for pointing out different things on your slides. I even use this in my classroom down at the main library because I have a remote that has an actual laser pointer, but it doesn't show up on the screen. So this is actually more useful. There's a pen tool. So if you use the pen tool, you can move around and you can write things on the screen by just dragging with your mouse, like so. That's bad. If you want to erase it, you can click here, go to the eraser, and I can click on each little line to erase that line. The highlighter, you just hold down on the mouse button and drag over the text that you want to highlight. Pretty easy. And you can change the ink color. You can also erase the ink on all slides. Sometimes that helps. See all slides. If I click on this, it gives me this slide hopping view where I can switch to a slide. I could switch to any slide I want just by clicking on it. I'll go back, but that's handy sometimes. You can zoom in. So I click on this. My audience is not seeing this part, but once I click to zoom, now their view has changed. So I can zoom into a particular piece of the slide and click this to zoom out. If I want to take my screen to just make my screen black for a moment, just click that, click it again to turn it back off. I can turn little subtitles on and off where it'll use my microphone. I don't know if that'll interfere with Zoom, but you could use that to turn subtitles on and off automatically and have your voice captioned. That's a really useful accessibility thing. You can switch over to whichever slide you last viewed, so that way you can hop back quickly without having to go to the whole see every slide view again. You can you can do a white screen or black screen. You can show the taskbar from here, and there's end show in this menu. And I'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Goodbye, paper crane. All right, I'm gonna do my animations here. And now we've presented our slideshow. All right. Oh yeah, when I hit end slideshow, if I use the pen to add any ink or the highlighter, I can hit keep, and it will actually save that as a graphic and as an animation, so that I can basically, as I'm cycling through in the future, rather than having to redraw that every time, I can just hit the button that I would normally use to move to the next slide, and it'll trigger that the ink and colors and stuff to show up. But I'll hit discard this time. And that is pretty much it. What questions do y'all have for me before we wrap it up for today? Oh, that's better. Much better. All right. I don't see anything right now. If you do have questions that you think of afterwards, or if it's too long to type or that sort of thing, feel free to shoot me an email. The email address is digital@cals.org. That's digital@cals.org. And hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow for your digital library, ebooks, audiobooks, and more. And in the meantime, okay, there's a question. Will the recording be on the YouTube channel? Why, yes, it sure will. The easiest way, now that I recall this, the easiest way to get there is actually head to cals.link, so cals.link/YouTube. And that will take you directly to the CALS YouTube channel, and you should be able to find it there. But yeah, anything else? Absolutely. Any other questions that you think of after the fact, just shoot me those via email, digital@cals.org. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day.